Hey, everybody, this is normally where I say it's Friday and give the date. Time for another encounter story. Well, it's actually Thursday. I'm putting this out a day early because we have a big snowstorm coming through, and we had part of it came through yesterday, and I lost my internet. Today I got it back, and I lost some of it during my show, Brunch with Bigfoot Mr. Rob, which was a great show. If you haven't checked it out, go watch it. So I'm doing this today because I don't know what Friday holds. And tomorrow, you guys, it's my birthday. January 27th. Anyways, I thought I'd just drop that little tidbit of information. But it's actually Thursday. I hope you like this. It's a pretty cool story from a subscriber, Danny. Excuse me. And here we go. I always had a sense of being watched ever since I was a little boy. I even had an uncanny knack of walking up to animals, whether they were domestic animals or wild animals from the woods. I grew up just outside of the northern forest of Maine. When I got older, I moved about 15 miles south of my parents, still keeping close with friends and family. Frankly, once you grow up here with all the beauty of nature, I cannot imagine anywhere on earth to call home. I became adept at hunting and fishing, spent many hours hiking and camping, and even became an expert in trapping and fishing for the succulent fresh Maine lobster that all the world has come to love. If, of course, you're into that type of food, that is. Earlier, I brought up the part about being watched. I always felt that, but never told either of my parents, especially in the early part of life up until this story that I'm presenting to you. I always feared that mom and dad would just say that it was my imagination or that I was dreaming. To be honest, I did wonder about that myself. I do remember I was right around 12 years old. My parents, brother, and I went camping. I almost immediately had a feeling that something or someone was peering in at us from the woodline. I got up after sleeping from inside my tent sometime in the morning. It seemed as though I was being called to, yet could not determine from where inside these thoughts were coming from inside of my head. Yet I had to walk to the tree line that was maybe 30 yards or so from camp. I remember my dad, who was already up, saying, "Danny, where are you going by yourself?" I replied back, "Hey, Dad, I just want to venture to the tree line." He responded, okay, son, just don't venture into the woods." I knew my dad was a little bit apprehensive at this, but as long as I was in his sight, I believe it eased his mind. My mom and dad started me and my brother, my twin brother Darren, out camping at perhaps the age of 6 or 7. It seems weird to say we already were veterans of the woods. Yet, still Dad, very cautious of us venturing out alone and by ourselves. And I guess as a parent, I'd have to respect that. So I set foot towards the tree line. The colors of the woods were full of brilliant colors, and the air was fresh and crisp. Just a great start to the day. I got within 10 feet of the woodline when the thoughts inside my head started to flutter into my mind. "Go no further, Danny," was the thought that I read or felt from inside the mind. I started to tremble. This was clear as day. The palms of my hands started to sweat. What on earth is this? I thought. I turned back around to look at my dad. I got a visual of him. He must have noticed and gave me a reassuring hand, a wave, and gestured back towards me. I then get closer toward the woodline and peer into the darkness. Again, the words come to my head, "Go no further." I stopped and squinted into the woods, not as fearful as the first time. Then suddenly, an orange-colored orb appeared, and it danced like 10 feet from inside of the woodline. This went on for, I would say, maybe 30 seconds. Then it vanished. I was excited and ready to run back to tell my father. Then a set of glowing yellow eyes appeared from where the orbs had disappeared. I knew these were eyes as I had experienced all sorts of eye shine in the years camping with my dad and my mom. However, these eyes were bigger, but they seemed a bit odd. I felt a chill run through my body. Then again, from inside my mind, the words rang out, but this time different. You are in danger. After hearing this, I turned around and sped back to camp and felt compelled to tell my dad what had just occurred. After telling my dad, as expected, he laughed and told me, "This is why I can't let you venture off too far without adult supervision." He laughed again and said, "You need a few more years under your belt, son," and went about his day and started to chop wood. Later on that day, around 7 at night, we all gathered around at a fire. My dad and mom made up a fire. My mom was preparing the ingredients needed to make s'mores. Then that strange, eerie feeling of being watched overtook my body, and then the words inside my mind rang out. Your dad should have listened to you. Okay, you guys, this is kind of creepy. This thing is communicating and almost listening in into what the father and son are talking about. This is weird. I then started to cry. I cried out to my dad. I said, "Dad, that thing from the forest has returned." My dad got perturbed with me and said, "Danny, you need to get over this." Of course, my mom, being more compassionate than my dad, grabbed me and tried to comfort me and stop me from crying and told me everything would be all right. While Mom is trying to console me, we noticed my dad was standing up and staring back into the tree line. He almost seemed frozen and yelled, "Jan," my mother's name, "get the kids down and get down to the truck." Before my mom can gather my brother and myself, we can see what Dad had been looking at or staring out into the tree line. Not one set of glowing eyes, but 3 sets. But these eyes are red eyes and are advancing. I like to say these beings are on 4 legs and they appear to be wolf-like, but much taller or bigger, I should say, than a wolf. Something told me this was not natural inside my head. These wolf-like creatures were also not solid. They were kind of transparent. They were 3 abreast. Then, all of a sudden, they stand up on 2 legs. They now go from 4-legged to bipedal. My entire family was in shock and terrified. My dad tried to utter words back to my mom, to my brother, and to myself, but he could not seem to move or exert any vocals at us. I am waiting for new words to be communicated back to me like the previous times. So the guy is waiting for this being to once again talk to him in his mind, but he gets nothing. Then all of a sudden the beast let out a shrilling and blood-curdling cry, directed right at the campsite. Then they turned back around, they got back on all 4s, and ran into the tree line. They did not even make it to the woods, as they all seemed to evaporate like steam into the night air. My dad, finally believing in me, asked me what exactly it was that was being communicated to me earlier. I gave my dad a look, like, "Dad, thanks a lot for not paying any attention to what I was telling you all day." Before I could continue on and answer, he put his finger to my lips, and he says this: "They somehow spoke to me." My mother asked, Well, what was it? What did they say? I don't understand. And then he says the words that were uttered into his mind was this, quote, "You should have listened to your son, and you should have left as your son told you." My dad to this day always talks about that night and how he was so sorry and thinking I was just imagining things. He has never had an encounter like that, nor have I. In fact, to this day, Rob, I have had no encounters, and those voices from inside my head from back when I was 12 years old have ceased. I've had no experiences. I guess you would call it mind speak. I have not had that at all. Haven't seen anything. I still hunt. I get my deer, and life goes on. But I do say this, I'm glad that whatever we saw that night gave the final word to my dad, and I'm very glad that my dad took heed and got us out of the campsite that night, because I do not know if we would have stayed, what would have happened. Thank you for letting me share. Danny. Thank you, Danny, for that. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Seems kind of creepy. Seems, again, we hear these stories about all these cryptids. Hear the eye shine, again, the mind speak, talking to this child, trying to tell him what to tell his father to get out. I'm just glad that whatever this was in the forest wasn't really nefarious. I'd hate to see if they would have stayed, what would have happened for sure. I don't know. That's creepy. It's kind of paranormal. I'm not going to say Dogman. I'm thinking it was something, a spirit of the woods of some sort, of maybe an animal spirit out in the woods that told these folks that maybe it was, they were telling them to leave because maybe this apparition or this paranormal thing was letting them know, go, because something might happen. So I don't know. You can take that as a positive or a negative. I just take it as being creepy. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to Bigfoot Michigan Rob on YouTube. Until next time, BMR is out. Have a great weekend. And if anybody is suffering from the winter storm that I am, stay warm. And I hope you got all your supplies early, because I won't be leaving here for a couple days. Have a great night.